Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. We have another in-game analysis as Frank Lampard faced his second consecutive big test as Chelsea lined up against Liverpool for the UEFA Super Cup. It was a tight match, and in the end, it ended 1-0 in normal time thanks to goals from Giroud and Mane struck again in extra time and was joined by Jorginho. But what tactics did each manager use? In this video, we take a look. But just quickly, if you're new around here and want to see more football videos, go ahead and hit subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, a like would be great. Feel free to drop video suggestions below as well. Now, let's get into it. So on paper, Liverpool's rough start in formation was a 4-3-3 consisting of the following. In response, Chelsea used a 4-3-3 on paper as well, but as you'll see, both teams were very fluid. There was a lot going on in this match, so not all tactics will be covered, so feel free to note your observations in the comments below. We'll start with what Liverpool did in possession. From deep, Liverpool's shape was roughly a 4-3-3 when the centre-backs received the ball, with the full-backs pushed slightly higher up. Most times, Fabinho, as the sole holding midfielder, would drop deeper, but still stayed in front of the centre-backs to form passing triangles. During this phase, Chelsea would use a rough 4-5-1 shape for the most part, and allowed Liverpool to move through their own defensive third relatively easily, before beginning their press with their mid-block later on. In this position, Chelsea tried to limit Liverpool's central penetration, using their forwards and midfielders to compact the space. One of the midfielders would often advance alongside Abraham and cut off options to one side, forcing them wide, and in this space is where Chelsea would look to press. To counter this, Liverpool would drop Henderson into a double pivot, and up front, Oxlade-Chamberlain would move centrally to draw markers, and this often opened room for Liverpool in this phase. Usually, Liverpool's flying fullbacks would join in during this phase, but Gomez on the right isn't as progressive as Alexander-Arnold, and on the left, Chelsea often kept Pedro high, which was a gamble. When it worked, it meant that Robertson would not advance as he was concerned about the man, or if he did go forward, it left Pedro with space on the break. When it didn't work, it meant that Liverpool had free rein down the left-hand side, and this is where most of their attacking play was. But another way that Liverpool countered this was by dropping Milner or Wijnaldum into the left-back role during build-up, while Fabinho and Henderson maintained a double pivot. With Milner covering, Robertson could attack high up the pitch, whilst Pedro stayed on Milner. Oxlade-Chamberlain had a free role, and he would assist Robertson by taking up space in the left half space, so Azpilicueta would tuck in more, which would free Robertson, or if he chose to stay wide, Oxlade-Chamberlain would have space to manipulate. On the right-hand side, Liverpool tried to isolate Salah against Emerson, as when he advanced, he often left gaps behind. They often achieved this by overloading the left, as discussed, before Van Dijk sprayed balls towards him. In fact, often Liverpool's front three stayed spread across the pitch in order to increase the size of the gaps between Chelsea's back four. From here, Liverpool would also often move Henderson into the half space. Gomez stayed deeper with Pulisic, and from here, Henderson could draw a midfielder to create a 1-versus-1, or he could make a run into the channel where midfielder, centre-back and full-back would have to decide who was going to follow him. So either Robertson would be free to cross, or Salah would have an easier time creating 1-versus-1s. We see shades of this in Mane's first goal. The left-hand side is overloaded, Henderson makes a run into the half space drawing the midfielder, which frees Salah for the quick switch. A quick interchange later, and Liverpool score. As hinted at earlier, his high position meant that Pedro was crucial for the counter-attack. With the Liverpool midfield spread thin, either due to Milner being wide left or Henderson being high in the right half space, Chelsea often countered centrally through Kante, who would look to play it wide to Pedro, who was often free. Kante's driving runs were crucial for Giroud's goal, breaking the midfield line before feeding Pulisic and subsequently Giroud. But what did Chelsea do in steady possession? From goal kicks, Chelsea would split their centre-backs and the full-backs would push higher up, but Liverpool pressed with the front three, and Chelsea did not risk short passes. So, Kepa could try to find the full-backs in the space vacated. Failing that, Giroud would often push high, as you can't be offside from a goal kick, to try draw the centre-backs deeper and create space in midfield. However, Kepa's kicking range often fell short, so Giroud would have to drop deep whilst the ball was in the air and try to knock it down to Pedro or Pulisic. But in their controlled play from deep, they tried to play out, and Liverpool's pressing in this phase was patchy. When it worked well, the front three were compact and working as a team to cut off passing lanes and direct the play to their left-hand side. Once they got here, Chelsea would spring the trap and press, using the sideline as an extra defender and winning the ball high in this region. We saw elements of this in Mane's second goal, winning it in this wide left zone and attacking the box when Chelsea was out of position. When the Liverpool press failed, it was because the front three stayed wide on defense. Being wide is great in attack, but generally when defending you want to be compact. But when they stayed wide, the press would be disjointed, allowing Chelsea to play as they had time to get their heads up. This is evident in Pulisic's cancelled goal. The front three are spread wide, so Salah is indecisive on who to mark, and a simple ball is played over him to Emerson, who then releases Pulisic to score. But besides that, Lampard used his wide triangles where possible, but as Liverpool wanted them to go wide, it often didn't work for Chelsea. But centrally, Chelsea had some luck, as they gave their midfielders the freedom to run. If Liverpool pressed, Kante and Kovacic would stay behind the press and hope to receive the ball and run at the defense, which often worked, as Fabinho was a single pivot, so they could overwhelm him by allowing two runners forward, and use their link-up play to get into the box. From here, they could also thread balls forward into the forwards. But overall, after a close encounter, Klopp will be happy to come away with another trophy, whilst Lampard will be happy with a much improved scoreline. But what did you make of the match? Any tactics you noticed? Let us know in the comments below. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.